Welcome. This is Two Beans and a Screen, the podcast where we watch and talk about Korean dramas. I'm CB.
Hi, I'm Qomi.
And Qomi, this week, we are talking about episode 3 of Reborn Rich, which is a massive K-drama at the moment. Before we dive into anything, though, we wanted to rework the podcast a little bit, starting with doing a recap so everybody knows what's going on. If you don't need the recap, feel free to quickly go down to the description and you will find a time where you can skip ahead straight to our impressions. Feel free to also subscribe.
Yeah, give us a follow. Anyways. So we start off with the episode of the chairman giving Jin Do-Joon some plot of land that you see when he was a child in episode 2, and fast forward to the year 1996, where you see all the land develop and grow, and he actually earns 24 million USD or 24 billion won. So he's a 20-year-old million, whatever currency, heir now. And it cuts to Jin Do-Joon talking with his father and his brother, and how there's a New York Film Festival circuit happening, and he wants to go and help with some plans of investments. We also see Jin Do-Joon meeting So Min-young at 20 years old in front of an electronics store as she's crying about the disbandment of So Tae-jin and Boys. Later on, we are in New York, and you see a lot of notable historic events taking place. And we get to meet the CEO of Power Shares, Henry Oh, and Rachel, his assistant, aka Tiffany from Girls' Generation. After that, Jin Do-Joon wants to meet with Henry Oh again, and more historical events take place and happen. We cut back to South Korea, where the chairman wants Hondo Steel, and he wants the vice chairman to handle it himself and take care of acquiring this company. And we later on see that Jin Do-Joon's actually back as well, and he greets his grandfather, and you can see that have a really nice, chummy relationship now, which is actually really cute. Later on, the right-hand man of the chairman and the vice chairman has a serious conversation and confirms the suspicions of both the chairman and the vice chairman's anxiety with each other.
Yeah.
And their mucky relationship. Yeah. And then we finally see Jin Do-Joon going to school as a law student, and he meets the rich snobby kids and their prestigious club. But So Min-young catches his eye and he gets to take off. They finally meet in this music club, and he gets her to go to this prestigious club meeting with him. And later on, she and him have a not so nice conversation. As you can see that she is not a big fan of him. And at the end of the episode, we see that Power Shares, so the guy we met back in New York, actually bidding for Hondo Steel. Yeah.
So that's our summary. Let's actually jump right into that last point there. Jin Do-Joon and his investment. I feel like this is the big plot twist of episode 3 at the end, but it's something that was the pivotal turning point in episode 2 as well. So he gets this investment of land from his grandfather, the chairman, and he is immediately able to, at the beginning of episode 3, turn that into 24 million US dollars, which is an insane amount, especially in 1996. Is this what you expected him to do with the money? Because it's definitely not what I thought.
Dude, I don't think I really thought that much ahead, and obviously I am not a business person. So I totally thought that, he just wants a plot of land because it'll make some money. Maybe he wants to give it to his old family.
Yes.
Do something charitable. I don't know.
Yes.
I just thought he was doing something that would benefit, I guess, him and his old family in a way.
I thought the exact same thing. It was like a matter of he's buying this land to turn it into something for his family, and instead he uses it to get revenge on his new family. It's him using this new investment power that he has, 24 million US dollars, to basically go, oh, they want Hondo Steel to grow their empire. What if I bought it instead so they can't? Like, that is the biggest middle finger to his own family I can think of.
But, when they announced, U.S. company Power Shares is going to partake in this bidding for Hondo Steel, did you expect to see Jin Do-Joon in the empty office space, the classic villain reveal shot?
Okay, that is totally the classic villain reveal. Like, it reminds me of Fight Club, right? You see this scene where these towers are going to get blown up at the end of Fight Club, and it's this iconic shot, and I was like, they're really going there. They're really taking him down the villain route. He is not, he may be the protagonist of the show. Like, he is the main character of the show. I'm not going to classify him as a good guy anymore.
It reminds me of exactly his role in Vincenzo too. He's the protagonist, but also he has like things in the background that he's scheming.
He's totally scheming the entire time, because when I think about where he started, right? He was in episode 1, he's this kind of powerless character who does whatever he's told. He doesn't even question it. And now we are at the point where he used what he knew, being that he knows exactly what's going to happen in the future, to his advantage, so he can turn it into not just a small, tidy profit, but a massive amount of money that he can then use to screw over somebody who could potentially have killed him in the future. It's very, very smart, but I'm not saying it's a good thing. It is conniving. That's how I'd characterize him. Conniving. So basically, I want to talk about this right away, because this is the framework for everything that happens. That recap that you went over, it's the reason he goes to New York. It's the reason that he's meeting up with all of these different people, and all of the machinations that are happening in the family all happen because of this Hondo Steel investment. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting.
I don't think he went to New York thinking about that. He just got lucky that he bumped into Henry O with his superstitious donut, and that's how he formulated his plan. Like, it's like his life is going so smoothly now.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It's a very good point. Okay, so I disagree only in that I think he went there with the intention of investing money, but I don't think it would have gone that smoothly had he not run into him, because Mr. O is a really interesting character. When I first saw him, I'm like, okay, they've already set up this motif of a donut. We're gonna see donuts again. There's no way you spend an entire conversation with this guy talking about a donut that will not come back in some way. But with that being said, he actually turned out to be a really interesting character and a really important character.
I feel like he will be an important character just because we do see him again when he goes to his company to meet him, right?
Yeah.
And he tries to leave him his phone number, his address, whatever, because he knows what's going to happen in the future. One of the notable things that happened was the chess game, right? Against the
Kasparov versus Deep Blue. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He can easily predict what happens because he already knows. So that's how he kind of gets people to take a chance on him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He has a superpower that he's not afraid to abuse. And several people have already kind of picked up on it. Like, his grandfather asks him, like the chairman straight up asks him in episode 2 is one of the most important moments. He says, "Can you predict the future?" And he calls him out on it because he keeps doing it. He's consistently using it to his advantage, but he's not afraid of it. He's not afraid to use it to basically trick people into certain situations. So this will shift us into a little bit of a different conversation, but Jin Do-Joon keeps referencing historical events that are still to come. You know, he knows exactly what's going to happen all the way up to essentially what I believe is 2022. He knows what's going to happen and nobody else does. But does him knowing all of these things undermine his character? Like, he was a very competent person in the future. Obviously, he's smart enough to get into law school. But because he basically has a cheat code, does that make him less impressive as a character?
That is a very good question. Does it make him less impressive as a character?
Yeah, okay. So what I mean is, if somebody achieved all the things that he did without this essential cheat code, like he's not outwitting somebody just on his own merit. He already has an answer as an out card. Anytime something's getting too dicey and he needs to win over an investor, I can tell you who's going to win this chess game. I can tell you what's going to happen in a year from now. He always has an out card, right?
Yeah.
Does it make him less impressive as a character?
I think it is going to get old. Like, as viewers, we're just going to be like, oh, he's just going to say something that's going to happen, get someone to believe him.
Right.
The person's going to question him. Like, I think it will get repetitive, but it probably is necessary for his character to pull out those cards because he is trying to change history in a way, right? He's trying to become the owner of Sunyang, and he's trying to find his killer. But does it make him less impressive? I think it kind of does because it's just his.
It is that. It's a cheat code, right?
Yeah, it's his card that he always waves.
Now, on the other hand, does it make it more impressive that he is able to manipulate it to his advantage? We see him in episode 2 when he is trying to save his grandfather, right? Like the chairman is supposed to get on a flight that he knows is going to crash. And so he just calls up, essentially, I don't know what the
airline?
Korean version. Yeah, exactly. It's the airline. And he's like, the plane is going to crash. You need to make sure that it does not take off. He's doing anything he can, and nobody believes him because he's not framing it in a way that is believable. Whereas now when we see him when he's 20, he has an answer for everything. To me, it's still impressive, even though it is a cheat code. Absolutely, but nobody else in my mind could pull off what he's pulling because he knows how to read people better than anyone. He knows how to read the chairman. He knows how to read Mr. O. He knows how to read all of his uncles as well. Like, he knows how to push all their buttons. He knows what moves they're going to make so that at any point he can just shift the conversation. He is very quick-witted.
I think it just makes him a little bit like too OP.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
We just know that he will get whatever he wants.
This is an isekai.
Okay.
It's true, though. He is reborn, and he's given a superpower. It's straight up an isekai. The only difference is that he does not have a harem at this point, and I hope he does not.
Speaking of which, last episode, you were talking about how you don't think there's going to be a love story in this show, but now that you watch episode 3, what do you think?
You are absolutely right, because I was like, would they do this to him? Would they give him a love interest? And because I talked about how they have tension, there is a lot of tension between these two characters, and that ramped up this episode, but not in the way that I expected. So obviously he re-meets I'm forgetting her name. It is So Min Young. Okay, so he re-meets her and she's crying over her favorite band breaking up. The next time we see them, though, he introduces himself again in, I think it was like a music library or something like that.
Something like that, like a music club, music, whatever.
Yeah, and
room.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like almost the reason I compare it to a library is it's based off of a famous scene, and I can't think of where it's from, but it's like a romantic scene where they're peering through the books at each other,
the shelves, and like make eye contact. I was like,
yes.
Bleh.
But it's really effective, right? It's really effective in that it's setting the scene of like, oh, are they going to have? And then she completely shuts it down. She's like, I've seen you somewhere before. Why do I know you? He holds up her favorite album, and it flashes back to he was the guy staring at her. She was bawling her eyes out, and he was laughing at her.
Kind of giggling, yeah.
Which immediately, though, the way they shot it to look like it was going to be a romance puts that idea in our head, right? Like, clearly these two are going to have some connection. Whether it reaches the point of being an actual romance is a very different conversation. But I think knowing what we know from episode 1, where she is angry at this company, it's enough context to basically be like, okay, they clearly have some relationship, and he may affect how she feels about Sunyang.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of backs up what we were talking about, how maybe she is seeking revenge and maybe he was the one that she is trying to find answers about.
Now,
because I feel like...
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just feel like, their relationship's definitely going to blossom in a way.
Yeah.
But, as you were saying...
No, so I was going to ask you, because these two characters also have what I feel is the most serious moment of this episode, in that They have a very serious conversation. So he actually does, in that scene, manage to get her out on a date. He basically is like, I can tell you... Date, right. He gets her to agree to have dinner with him. And how he does it is he says that he knows when her favorite band is going to have a comeback. And so, of course, being a super fan, she's like, okay, I will do anything. Let's have dinner. But when they actually get there, that is when he goes out with the prestigious club. This is kind of, he needs a partner.
Rich kids.
Right. And she doesn't want to be there. How did you feel about this scene? Because it's heavy. It's actually a very heavy scene to watch.
I think, yeah, he couldn't avoid not going because he is someone with a powerful family. It would look bad if he doesn't go, but also it doesn't do not really any benefits for him to go. I guess he's just going just to make connections, and that's really what is important to him and his character. It seems like making these strong connections. During the event or whatever, you see them have a private conversation, and she's really angry at him, saying like, why did you bring me here? This is not a scene I would be like joining. This is not me. But he's like, oh, I concur, basically. Like, he says that she is someone with privilege and power as well, because her father is the highest attorney?
Yeah, I can't remember what the actual is.
Yeah, he's like a really high-ranking prosecutor.
Yeah.
In a really well-known company as well, I believe.
He may not be wealthy, but he's in a position of power for sure.
Yes. She is also in a powerful family.
Totally.
And he kind of tells her in a way that I guess she didn't really realize, like, her position of privilege as well. How he mentions, like, look at you, you don't need to work and you can just focus on your school studies in high school from basically our equivalent of grade 10 to grade 12.
Yeah.
You just had to study. You did not have to worry about anything. You didn't have to worry about food. You didn't have to worry about money. You didn't have to worry about anything other than studying. Don't you think that is also privilege, that you got to just study and work hard to get into the school? And you can see that she realizes, like, that is some sort of privilege.
Yeah,
I thought.
Well, it's interesting because this is a conversation that a lot of us are having today, right? This is a conversation from 2022. With perspective, we are now recognizing a lot of the privilege that a lot of us have. So seeing it in the context of 1996 is really interesting because for her, of course, she's not a billionaire. He is, by definition, already a billionaire at 20. So for her, it's a very unfair advantage that he has. He's driven to school every day. He has a grandfather who could buy probably like a quarter of the population of Korea, right? It's like he's so wealthy. Where for her, she didn't see herself as this person with privilege in the same way that he is, right? It's not about wealth, but when he frames it in a way for her where, as you said, like she can study whenever she needs to. She doesn't have to work a second job. She doesn't have to help out with family labor when your parents are getting too old to do certain tasks. You're not having to do the accounting for people who may not have an education in your family. There's a whole bunch of stuff that he kind of calls out and reframes. How did you feel that fit into the episode? Because I felt like tonally this was a more comedic episode, and this was the one heavy scene where it's a very serious conversation. And you can see that both of them are upset. He's upset that she calls him privileged because he has been obviously in a different life. He has been from a poor family. And for him, she's very privileged. But on the other hand, she sees him as privileged. And when she's called out on it, she gets very, very upset. Did you feel that worked well here?
Yeah, like I can totally see why he would call her out and why he was like upset about what she was accusing him of, because he came from a poor family in his old life. Like, in episode 1, you see him studying, which we can now assume that it was probably some law textbook, right?
Yeah.
I feel like in his old life, he would have wanted to become a lawyer or be in law, but he just couldn't because of his financial status and the status of his family. So when she was boasting about how, look at you, rich boy, with all your money, I'm not privileged, he also opened her eyes to show that she is in a way, because he came from something much more like he was in a worse condition than she is in.
Yep.
And like therefore it kind of like hit a sore spot for him, where he's like, I couldn't have done what you're doing right now in my old life, type of thing.
Yeah.
Like, you are also so extremely privileged, but you just don't understand. So
yeah, he used it as
why.
He used it as basically an opportunity. He felt like she was being hypocritical, right? Like, she's like, I would never come to this in a million years. These people are so pretentious, and they're really literally called the prestigious club. So, you know, fair game, and they are very snobby. Good way to put it. In this case, he's able to kind of educate her in that moment. She may not like it, but I feel like these are the moments that are going to build towards that romance. She realizes that he's not just this snobby kid. He's not just another playboy who is throwing around his money to do whatever he wants. Like, he has purpose. He is thinking about things that other people are not. And I feel like that might be what brings them together eventually.
Yeah, I think he for sure comes off a lot cockier and obnoxious in this new life. Like, it is so like, sometimes when I'm watching, I'm like, he's so obnoxious.
Yeah, okay, I want to talk about this. Can I talk about this? Okay. So, let's frame this in the conversation that we had last episode, where you kind of talked about how he usually plays these goofy, or at least more recently, he's played goofy characters. Like Vincenzo, he was a lot goofier than we were expecting, but he's really, really funny in Vincenzo. Like, I was not expecting him to be as funny as he is, because he was somewhat of an assassin type character. In the first episode, what I really liked about his acting and his character was it was the complete opposite of that. He had a lot of self-awareness. He was very reserved. And when we see him reborn and born into this family, he has trouble adapting because he's just not used to this level of privilege. He has everything. But now when we see him when he's 20 and he's so cocky, I just kind of like, I found it much harder to relate to him. And obviously he's still working towards those same goals, but did you find that you didn't like the character as much? And will that stand in the way of maybe his end goals? Like, will he get too caught up in this life? I don't know. I just need your impressions on it, because it really threw me this episode. Yeah,
I definitely agree that his character, just got obnoxious because of the wealth. Like, he is not as he's still pretty calculating, but you could see how much more reserved he was in his old life. Even in episode 2, when we didn't see him, but we heard his thoughts, you can see how he needed to like plan things through carefully first. But now that he has money, he can basically say whatever he wants, and it doesn't have the same consequences. Like, I think he just, now in his new life, he knows that like he has a safety cushion, basically. Like, he is more, I don't even know how to explain it. Like,
I know what you mean. Yeah. He's taking risks where he couldn't before, and that could be a good thing. Like, he's using this almost like character. I feel like he is, and I'm saying this as like Jin Do-Joon is actually playing a character a bit at times. With his grandfather, you can see him play up his youthfulness so that he still thinks of him as naive. And with Mr. O, he was like all over him, very, very confident, almost pushing his buttons on purpose. So I feel like Jin Do-Joon is playing a character, and there's still that reserved person inside. But I don't know.
You mentioning that makes me think about how I don't find it as believable that he's like a 40-something-year-old, well, now 50-something-year-old technically, right, in a 20-year-old's body. Like, it just kind of feels like, like he has the superpower to see into the future instead of actually being from the future in a younger body now. Like, how do I think about it? Like,
so you think he acts like a 20-year-old is what you think?
Yeah, like, he is acting like a 20-year-old. He is acting like a younger person, but it makes me forget that, like, he's supposed to be 40-something. Like, he...
Okay,
I don't know. Like,
let me ask you this.
Like,
so, if you were, let's say, able to go back in time, would you want to live life like you actually were a 20-year-old? And, like, I don't know. Maybe he's taking that advantage. Maybe he is enjoying his youth. He's not really, though. He's not going on dates. He's not doing any of that stuff. It really just is the way he acts towards other people. He acts cocky.
But when he runs into her at the electronics store or whatever, right?
Yeah.
He's giggling like a 20-year-old
That's true.
kid.
That's true. I forgot about that.
Every time he sees her, he's like smirking and kind of like, like smitten by her. Like
that's not even like
no
a 20-year-old. He's like acting like a 14-year-old who's like
Something
crushing on
like
somebody and
that.
like throwing an eraser at her to get her attention. It's like,
yeah,
what?
it's like this is such a typical K-drama reaction for the lead guy and the lead girl having their little moment of like cutesiness together. But like this is supposed to be a 40-something-year-old guy.
Yeah.
Seeing the 20-year-old version of the girl that he knew way back when, right? Like,
yeah.
It doesn't feel like he is a 40-something-year-old anymore. It just feels like he is his
part of that
age,
might
kind of?
be because he has had to relive himself. Like, he's went back to being like 10 or something at the beginning. I can't remember how old he was in episode 2, but he's had to relive that entire time.
I think he...
Because it was 87, right?
Somewhere. Yeah.
So if he's
he was
20
11.
now, he was 11. Right.
Yeah.
So having to relive, and again, physiologically, he probably has the hormones of a 20-year-old. Even if he has a 40-year-old's mind who has already lived all of this, I wonder if that would actually affect it. Like, physiologically, having all those emotions pent up. Am I thinking too much into this? We're making excuses here, right?
Yeah, I feel like, okay, like, I don't know, man. I was thinking, like, as let's make it not the age not as significant, okay? Let's say you're a 20-something-year-old.
Yep.
When you see a teen, a 15-year-old, 16, 17, even at like 21, you'll see the 17-year-old as like as so young, as like a child, as like not someone you would be interested in type of thing.
Totally.
Like you just see them so differently.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just feel like as a 40-something-year-old, he would not have the same views of like people at different ages as like versus like if he was actually 20-something, he would see them as a 20-something-year-old. Similarly, he would not have the same thoughts and feelings about the 20-year-old as a 40-something-year-old.
No, it's a good point. It's why I wanted to talk about it, because it kept throwing me. The other thing is, this episode, not only his character, but this whole episode had a much lighter tone. I felt like the first episode didn't throw a single joke out there. It was really setting up the plot point of him getting killed and being reborn. It was all building up the original life that he lived. Episode 2, very heavy as well. Him being reborn into this family, growing up, earning his grandfather's trust and affection, but really, really heavy, seeing, his mom go through what she did in the family, learning about the different family members. Whereas here, it's like jokes constantly flying, whether it is, seeing his brother all dressed up, whether it's the romantic moments or him just out playing people, lots of references as well, like historical references. We haven't had a chance to talk about that yet, but when he's in New York, there's a lot of that. How did you feel about the tone of the episode?
I remember last episode we talked about this where we were predicting where this was headed. Do you think it'll be serious or throughout the entire show? And I think we kind of thought that like we could see it being a more serious show, not as goofy. But I don't know, I felt like deep down it's a K-drama. It has to be a little sillier, it has to be goofier, it has to have light tones in it, because that's what people love about K-dramas. They love the cute moments, they love the light-hearted stuff sometimes. So I think I was hoping it would not be as funny, but also at the same time I wasn't shocked that it was. Like I kind of like thought it would kind of go down this route. How about you?
I'm of two minds on this, because I'm also disappointed. I kind of really liked the tone of the show, and I didn't want it to go down the funny route. But I'm not upset with where they found the balance. It's not as silly as something like Vincenzo or a few of the other K-dramas I've watched recently. But at the same time, I'm a little surprised that it did go this comedic, because in most cases when I think about them, like I think about something like Crash Landing on You, the first episode is really silly. And then over time, it kind of tends to get less silly. I actually think Vincenzo is another good example of that. Like, there are silly moments, but you get more heavily into the conflict and the relationships and stuff, and it gets darker over time. And this is kind of taking the opposite route. It was really heavy up front, and now it's kind of getting lighter in episode 3. I think it's going to take time to see if they find a good balance. Like maybe there are some comedic characters, usually supporting characters are a little bit more goofy. Whereas here, I feel like the protagonist is one of the goofy characters. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Speaking of goofy characters, though.
Yeah.
One of our favorite supportive goofy characters made a comeback.
Yeah, he did.
But you didn't want to see him as a goofy character this time.
No, that's true. I did want to see him play more of a straight man because we have, so many people who have conflict in the show. And when we heard about the brother, so I think he would be 4'2", right? In the family structure.
Yes.
And they talk about him being outside in an entertainment industry outside of the family. So I was like, oh, it'll be interesting to find out why he's not connected. So I thought he might have a serious role. Kind of disappointing he's doing the comedic thing, but I just really like the actor. I think he does such a good job, and immediately he sells you at the beginning.
Yes. Oh my gosh, dude. When we finally see his character, he's kind of like dancing and singing in the film studio or office, whatever. I thought I heard "Come Back Home," like the melody, very softly, and like something like in my mind like peaked. I was like, wait, is that "Come Back Home"? I don't know. I don't hear it anymore. And then he starts rapping "Come Back Home," and I'm like, oh my god, that was the first reference I caught. And I was like, yo, like I immediately knew when I heard it. And I was like, oh my god, it's so Taijin.
I don't know K-pop nearly as well as you do, but even I am aware of this group. Like, they are one of the most iconic, original K-pop groups.
Yeah, like the first boy group.
Totally. Yeah. Like, and obviously started one of the big 3, right? So, hugely important to Korean culture. I want to ask you, how many references did you catch? And I don't need every single one, but what were some of the bigger ones? Because they were throwing these out constantly this episode.
Yeah. So obviously, like So Taejin, the song, the most like one of the most iconic songs, "Come Back Home," which like 21 also made like a rendition of it.
Oh, awesome!
BTS made a rendition of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, like with they performed it with So Taejin like when it came out too.
You're gonna link that to me later. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So that was the first one. Later on, "Home Alone," telling his father that like, yo, remember when I told you to invest? It was Home Alone, and look how well it did. I actually looked it up too. Like obviously they've done their research for this stuff. But I just wanted to see like if it was actually like
a hit
correct.
in Korea. Yeah.
Yeah. And also like came out in 1996. The years. Oh no! It came out in 1990, and a flashback to him being a kid, saying, "Dad, you should invest in this."
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, 1990, he was still a kid. Yeah, that makes sense.
Checks out.
Yeah, later on we go to New York, and the older brother is like, can you think of a day like a dream that I have that a South Korean film would win Best Picture at the Oscars? Yeah, I wonder what movie they're talking about that could possibly happen. Yeah. And then later on he's like, oh, maybe one day we will see a Korean song at the top 100 billboards. I wonder who that group was. The iconic BTS, maybe?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but a man can only dream. Maybe dreams will come true one day. And you see the father saying, you know that they always snub non-English speaking films, like
shots fired.
Yeah, you remember the clip where people what was it? The clip of Bong Joon-ho?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like
it's not that hard to read subtitles.
I felt like that was a connection.
But one of my favorite things about this part is because it's totally true. Like, they're finally getting the recognition, and obviously he has lived to see this happen. But for these people, like, he looks over at his brother, and his brother is just like, well, sorry, Jin Do-Joon is reacting to it like, how are you saying all these things right now? Because they all are going to come true. And he looks at him and he's like, you're right. That's way too much of a dream. They're never going to happen. Like, it's just that moment, and you can see that the people making the show are really proud of those accomplishments. You would be too. Like, that's huge.
Yeah. Like, when has Asian media have ever like been so prevalent in
Absolutely.
Western. Yeah.
The Korean wave has penetrated Western media in a way that I don't think anybody could have predicted. I mean, the fact that a white boy from the suburbs would one day consume as much Korean media as I have. You know, I feel like we grew up hearing so much about Japanese media because of the usual, like anime, a lot of the electronics and that sort of stuff. And then you move beyond that, you learn more about the culture and all of that and the historical significance of why those things became popular. But Korean media was not something that I grew up with. It was really only in the last decade that I became aware of it. First, it was SHINee, then it was BTS, and then it grows and grows, and now I know a whole bunch of groups. But hearing them talk about it historically and how it was such a surprise for them as well really put that in context.
Yeah, I just really like that moment. It's like a heartwarming, like proud moment. Like
Totally.
they see how far they come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
200%.
and
All right. Did you catch any others?
the Titanic.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Yeah, but I did have a question for you about that because
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
talking because when Rachel and Henry O were arguing about his investment into
Yep.
the Titanic, she was like, "Dude, that girl on the movie poster looks like his aunt. Like, she looks so old. She was only 22 back then. Like, do you like? I am not well versed in like maybe the world of actors or anything, but is 22 considered old back then as an actor?
I don't think so. I think it's because Leonardo DiCaprio was so young, and I don't know exactly how old he was, but I feel like she just looked old maybe to them. Because when they were talking about it, it didn't throw me off, but I also don't know them very well as actors or anything, so I just kind of took it as, oh yeah, she must be a lot older. So she was only 22?
Yeah, she was 22, so I was like, is that like a little dig into like
Yikes.
is 22 as a woman
Yeah.
old in the industry? Because like you definitely sometimes even pick up on that now in 2022 that like
Yeah.
women as soon as I get to like 30, they're old. They're
Right.
they are not as not as hot, not as prevalent as like the young upcoming actors and everything
It's true.
like that.
It's
Yeah,
true. And,
so I was
and
like,
even then, the producer had to basically provide a way to sexualize her of, oh, well, you know, in a recession, they want somebody more stable. They want someone older, more mature. Like, it had to be, how do we sexualize her as opposed to, oh, no, she's a really talented actor. Like, it wasn't anything to do with her as a person. It's like, oh, no, here's why men will love it. Yeah, so I think it totally could be. I'm going to be completely honest. I didn't think about that context at all until you brought it up.
I don't know. I just thought it was so interesting how like she had to specifically say she looks like his aunt. Why
Yeah.
are you investing in this?
No, that's really interesting. So that's kind of what hit you at that moment.
I was just like, I can see why like she would be like, why are you investing $10 million into a foreign film?
Right.
Or, like, I mean, it's not foreign; it's in New York. But like, why are you investing in $10 million? It's about boats, basically.
Yes,
But like
exactly.
she had to bring up the fact that she looked old. So I was like,
Yeah.
like maybe CB will know something about this. I don't know.
No, that I have no additional context to it. That I think it's a really interesting point that you bring up because I hadn't thought about it, and something that we'll have to look into after this episode for sure.
Yeah, but my favorite part, well, not my favorite, the moment that made me think of you, though,
Oh?
I wonder if you enjoyed that, was when the older brother was like, you know why investing in Titanic is going to suck? It's about boats. And you know what always happens? They sink. Just like the investment will, basically, along
Just
those
a
lines.
terrible pun.
Yeah, it was like a complete dad joke, and I was like, CB? Is that you?
How dare you? You know what? The part that I liked about that was that he went and actually referenced other water-based movies. He brought up like Waterworld and these other projects, and he's like, his James Cameron's only flop, and he listed the movie. And I thought they were actually good points to bring up. What was interesting about that part to me too was when they were thinking about investing, they still had the opportunity to invest at a level of like production, even though they already had the poster and stuff. I was like, would that happen? Would they already have the poster, the casting, and be able to invest in production at that point? I thought that stuff would be locked down, but
Yeah, same.
I'm
yeah.
not usually involved in
We're
the
not in
production
pre-production
side.
usually.
No.
Yeah,
No. So
Yeah,
I'm just curious. I would want to chat with some people and find out what that timeline would look like. I don't think they would have any of the visuals like that in
Yeah.
pre-production phase.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because we're both in post, or some form of post. Like,
Yeah, I'm usually more on the like on-set side of things, but yeah.
yeah, like you're on production. I used to be when
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now you're
that
in
felt so
post.
long ago. Yeah, I'm in
Yeah.
post. I'm pretty sure like I can't really speak for it because we saw the movie posters come out for like the R shows
Yeah.
like as soon as it was coming out, like within maybe like the last
One
few
of the last
months.
things that's locked down, right?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
those posters were coming out towards the end.
Totally.
But I don't know, maybe pre-production already had them prepped and like we just didn't get to see them until the end as well.
For sure, yeah. I wonder, because a lot of this stuff isn't forward facing. Like, it's not like the world is seeing it, right? It's that these are investors. These are people who have millions of dollars. So maybe they would prep something. I don't know. It's just one of those things that popped into my head. I was like, they can
Yeah.
still invest in production at this point? Because it's true. If you can invest at that stage, obviously you're going to get a lot more than if you're investing late in the game just to bring it to Korea or just for advertising or that sort of stuff. But just an interesting little tidbit that I wanted to chat about.
Yeah. And also like the little event was in such a public space. Is that I don't know, that seems like easily someone who is not part of this can just walk in and see
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. In Central Park, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's something to chat about as well. This was obviously supposed to be 1996 New York.
Yeah.
Do you think they achieved it?
Honestly, it kind of felt like we were in Korea. Like
Okay.
when they filmed it, I forgot like they were in New York.
Same.
It did not like hit me. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it was. I thought the costumes were pretty decent. Like, I was looking at the background specifically to see, and you saw people
yeah,
wearing like fur coats. You saw people wearing what I figured is probably what people would wear. Maybe not colorful enough for the 90s. I don't know. But there were things that I thought they did a good job with, and yet it didn't feel like New York.
Yeah, it honestly just looked like it was someplace in Korea, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, they're in New York."
Yeah, for sure. Maybe part of that is the color. Maybe it is the production design. Maybe I don't know. There was something that kind of threw me off about it, but we'll see. In future episodes, I assume they will have to go to the U.S. again at some point, just based off the fact that he's now involved with this power shares, like
I don't
in
think
U.S.
so.
investment company. You don't think so?
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
I'm willing to bet that we will see him in the U.S. at some point, even if it's like a shareholders meeting or him investing in broader things to bring to Korea. I'm not sure. I think we'll see him in New York in some way.
yeah, okay, yeah, I
It's
guess.
Steve Jobs on a stage in a black turtleneck, you know?
Yeah, standing up there with them.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I have a few last questions before we wrap up our impressions for the episode because we still have a lot to talk about. But the one thing that keeps hitting me, despite him being a super cocky character, Jin Do-Joon is still kind of attached to his old family, right? And
Yeah.
we get these little moments of him checking up.
Oh, just one.
Right. But
I
that
want more.
that one was enough for me to say, okay, he still cares. And are they just, okay, yeah, my question to you, are they just setting us up for pain?
Yeah, probably. What's K-drama without pain, dude? Like,
True.
yeah.
And you're okay with this? Because, I mean, last episode, we kind of talked about a few of our favorite characters. And one of mine, I liked both of the moms a lot because they both showed how much they cared. I can't go through the pain if everything so far has lined up with whatever he does not affect the future. It's still playing out exactly as it should. And if that's true,
Yeah.
his mom will pass away at some point.
Yeah. See, like, I know it's only episode 3, but I thought maybe at some point, even though he's not affiliated with that family anymore, right? He could have
Yeah.
gotten to know his mom, the old mom, maybe visited the restaurant a lot, ate there a lot. You know, like
Yeah.
if you have regulars at a restaurant, you kind of be friendly and you guys talk and you guys just build a relationship and a bond. I was kind of hoping like he would still be able to do something like that, so we could see his old mom is still in his life and he can take care of her in a way. But judging from like that quick scene that we saw of him peering from the side of the alleyway, and she is obviously in pain, and him crying, like we can assume that maybe he hasn't reached out to her and doesn't have this relationship built. Like I'm hoping, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just like he wanted to go visit her, saw her in pain, held back the tears, and just couldn't handle it and just left type of thing. But I am still a little bit hopeful that he has some sort of relationship with her.
Just as I made a prediction, I think that should be your prediction, that he will make that connection at some point, or at least try. I feel like that is going to become more of a thing, because if he just watches as a bystander, there's no real stakes because we just know what's going to come. I would wager that he will reach out at some point or try to make that connection.
Yeah, like there's no point in showing us that there's no point if there's no, like, if he's not going to be having a relationship with her, I would think. Because K-dramas are so long, they can only fit so much into the story. They are showing us this. There has to be a reason why.
Typically 16 episodes. We're on episode 3. There is time.
I feel like there's so much that's going to happen in the show, though. Because there's so many questions that they're still, like, building and leading up to.
Okay, with this being episode 3, the release schedule of this one is interesting because at least typically on Netflix where we live, we get 2 episodes per week. Mm-hmm. This is 3 episodes per week. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's shifting how they're telling that story?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, have you ever noticed, like, in shows that release 2 episodes weekly, that the first episode that comes out has a major cliffhanger?
Yes.
And that hypes you up to want to see the next episode the next day, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that they're kind of doing something like that for this show as well? Like, they already planned it out, that they knew that it's going to be 3 episodes a week, and therefore first and second episode are hype, intense, you need to know more, and then the last episode is more on a lighter note, and maybe that's why this episode was a little goofier, a little less intense. Like, do you think this is all planned out in pre-production as well?
I wonder. I genuinely would love to work on a Korean production one day to know how it differs.
Yo, take me too.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because when we're in pre-production, I think it obviously depends on what kind of show you're working on and what kind of production, but a lot of that stuff is worked out in terms of overall arcs. Okay, what are the arcs for this character going to be? What are the arcs for beats going to be? But when it comes to individual episodes, it's typically written with a certain cadence, right? So, like, if you're producing 1 episode per week, you're not going to write all 10 episodes up front. You're going to write your pilot, then it'll get approval, and then you'll start the process of the next episode. And then that's still going into production. Then you're writing the next episode. It kind of does happen in that way. It's just you'll have a creative Bible to kind of guide you through that process, and major moments will be planned out in advance so that you can kind of keep up with production needs if a certain episode needs a higher budget and that sort of stuff. With this, I think they have to, as you're kind of talking about, knowing that there's a certain release schedule, I would not be surprised if you're absolutely right. Because it has to be, right? In the sense of there are so many more shows that are specific to Korea. Like, they have their whole own industry. It's not like they're importing all Western shows with a few Korean shows peppered in. No, they have their whole own industry competing against one another. Mm-hmm. So if you have a show that has a really good cliffhanger that leads into the next episode, and then you have a satisfying conclusion for the episode until the whole next week, that will leave them satisfied. And that is standard practice, I feel like, as you outlined. But for 3 episodes, maybe that's why? I don't know. It's something to think about for sure. I don't know. What do you think?
I think we're just going to have to experiment and keep watching to see. Like, we have to keep this in mind. Like, think about the next episodes we watch.
Okay.
Is this a theory that maybe... Because, like, we haven't worked on production, right? Like, we wouldn't know their schedule.
Yeah.
But maybe just from watching and we can see the intensities of it.
Yeah.
Maybe
okay,
that will
so
help our hypothesis.
We are still putting out episode 4 this week. So if episode 4 is intense, if episode 5 is intense, And then episode 6 is kind of more of a almost satisfying conclusion, or at least a lighthearted tone. Maybe that will kind of at least strengthen the theory. You don't want to have a heavy episode. You don't want to wear people down before the next week, but you need that one moment. You need that one thing to get people to come wait a whole week and tune in again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess we shall see the next upcoming episodes.
We shall see. With that said, that's going to wrap up our impressions for this episode. But we have a few fun things left for this episode. This is called Good or Bad. Qomi, I'm going to throw some quick fire questions at you. And I just need you to tell me, was it good or was it bad? All right? Are you ready?
Yes, but are we allowed to elaborate later on?
Yes, you can elaborate after the fact.
Okay.
I'm going to throw all the questions at you and then you can elaborate.
Okay, hit me.
All right. 3, 2, 1. The pizza the investor was eating, good or bad?
It looks so good.
Okay,
good.
The chairman, good or bad this episode? Quickfire question.
Good.
All right. The scene where Jin Do-Joon is trying to get So Min-young's attention in the library, good or bad?
Cringe.
The green screen.
The green screen?
Yes. The New York scene where they were showing... Never mind. Song Joong-Ki.
Good.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, that's all of them for this episode. We'll get more of those next episode. No, the green screen, there was one moment that threw me off where it was Central Park when we were seeing the festival. They CG'd some stuff in, and I don't think it was green screen, but it was there were some weird effects going on there.
I probably totally did not notice because I was probably writing something down.
This is very valid. We are taking a lot of notes these episodes.
Because when I looked up, he was already talking about his dream, like,
yes.
Oh, the dreams of our future.
It's true. It's true. All right, here we go. Our next section, I just like to call simply pet peeves. Qomi, I don't know about you. I had one big pet peeve this episode, but I want to know, what was your pet peeve for episode 3?
My pet peeve for episode.
Yeah, what bothered you this episode?
When they're in school, they made it look so 90s. The colors popped. Everything was a little fuzzier, I think. Or like it was so contrasted. Like the highlights were too bright for me, I guess.
The red car, you see them pull up in this, what I think was a Mercedes or something like that. It was like a really fancy car. And yeah, you're totally right. It was like poppy and it felt youthful. Like
young.
It was almost like 25, 21. You know how they kind of like really created a look that was 90s.
Yeah.
It was that.
Yeah. It happened in front of the electronics store too. That felt 90s. Yeah.
And anytime basically So Min-young was involved, it's like, oh, it's like we have to make it look 90s. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I don't know why. Like it still bumped for me as well because like the entire episode is set in the 90s. Why do you specifically make these sections like more youthful looking, more saturated colors? Like I don't know. It just made me question like why did they go down this direction? Like I know maybe because they did darker themes and tones for like more serious stuff, but like it was just such a big contrast. It's like I feel like for these things it didn't have to be so like on the nose.
Right.
Like I feel like color and especially color should help with subtle like
it should be consistent first, and then you can kind of leverage a little bit here and there. Like it has to be consistent throughout the entire episode, so it's stylistically similar. Yeah.
Okay. It felt like a not so great stylistic choice to make it so contrasting.
I know what you mean. Also, I feel like we should point out when we say bumped, that's a term that we hear a lot to basically call out something that stood out to you or bothered you when you watched something that took you out of the moment. So that we say like, this shot bumped for me because it jarred me out of what I was watching. So just something to call out because I feel like we use some terms that, maybe a lot of people don't hear as often. Yes. All right. My one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I feel like this happens a lot in K-dramas. English speaking. Tricky because, the most famous recent example would be something like a Squid Game where the English actors just weren't up to snuff. But also you hear about how hard it is because they're working with Korean directors, people who may not actually speak English themselves. In the case of this episode, it was Tiffany from SNSD or Girls' Generation, and she obviously is a phenomenal English speaker. I think you said before we actually recorded the episode, she was born in the States?
Yeah, I think she was born in Cali, LA.
Right, right. So she's spoken English her whole life, and it's very clear that it is one of her primary languages. And in this production, it's not like she's not speaking English well. It's just she's over pronunciating everything. Everything is proving that she's a strong English speaker as opposed to being a character. And so I want to chat with you very briefly about why you think that happens. Is it just that they don't know how to direct English? Is it a performance thing? Why do you think this happens?
Yeah, maybe it's just the direction of it. Like, I totally see this happening in Canto dramas as well, where, especially like because in Hong Kong, they also do speak English, right? And like, even Mando speaking dramas, whenever they have an English speaking character, it always is so cringe for some reason. It's because like they want to make sure that you know that like we are speaking amazing English or something like that. Like, I don't know. It's like whatever they make them say, it's just like something, it doesn't sound natural to us maybe. Like it's not,
Sure.
It doesn't sound like this is what we how we talk and what we would be talking about. Like I remember this like Hong Kong drama. Don't even remember the name of it though. But they made it so relevant that this guy is from Canada or something. So he's always like, this is how I speak. Like, I'm sorry, I always switch back into English this way. Oh, when I'm flustered, I always go back to English. Like, no! Like, I speak English and, like, Canto, I flip back and forth like that. Sometimes I have to do that with my parents if I can't say a certain phrase or word in Chinese. And, dude, I've never said something so, like, sorry, mother, I need to speak in English because I am so flustered right now. Like,
yeah. The way you say that really puts it into perspective of like, I just need to let out my frustration. Let me speak English for a moment. How dare you? Like, it is true. You like, that's not really how it works, right?
Yeah, like maybe it's just they can't really guide the performance of it. And maybe to them that it sounds, maybe to them it sounds like natural because they're not used to hearing the language. Maybe they're not too familiar with it. To them it sounds like, because she was angry at the moment, she was so heated about it, so maybe it was just like that, her performance of her being angry that they enjoyed, but they couldn't really direct the words she was saying.
Yeah, and it brings to mind something like localization, right? Like it could be as much the script as directing the performance, because in video games, for example, when you are translating something from, let's say, Japanese to English, you actually have a dedicated team there, not only to translate it directly, but to make it sound more natural to the region. So, you know, you wouldn't translate something directly. That's how you end up with stuff like the famous Castlevania example of, I can't remember the quote, but it's like the end of the game when Dracula's talking, he's like, "What is man but a pile of lies and deceit?" I can't remember what the line is, but it's a very famous, like, weird translation because they translated it exactly as it should be, as opposed to then going, okay, but how would an English speaker actually say this? You wouldn't say it like that. You would say, men are a race of liars and deceivers. Like you would say it differently. Like it just, so I wonder if it's as much a localization as performance. And then on top of that, like you were saying, if I was watching a Cantonese drama, or no, the opposite, if I was watching a Western show that had a Cantonese speaker, I wouldn't know if it probably was a good performance or not, because if I was seeing it be angry, like I don't understand a lot of the nuances of the language. And you know, we've talked about, I'm like, yeah, this language sounds like sometimes they're angry, and then I find out they're not at all. And this one, it sounds almost like everything is poetry, and then you find out they're having a very regular conversation. It's just there are different styles of communication for every language, and so maybe for them, English as the director, probably just found it to be a very natural performance. I hadn't really thought about it the way you phrased it.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's like totally what you said too about you are watching something and they are mainly speaking English and they switch to another language. I've totally seen in the subtitles when they're fully speaking like Cantonese, but they write in Mandarin. Like, I guess people wouldn't know that they're actually speaking Cantonese instead of Mandarin, but like,
True. Yeah.
there are people who do
true.
understand.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, like I don't remember what I was watching, but I'm like, that is not Mandarin. Like that is full on Canto. Why would the
Right.
subtitles say it's in Mandarin?
In Mandarin. Yeah, that's strange. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just one of
but-
those things where, like, when I hear one of those performances, I get completely thrown off.
Yeah, but I feel like that's like a lot of like in K-dramas, like the English
Totally.
performances are a little bit cringe.
Yeah,
It's just because we speak the language.
exactly
Probably
that.
not cringe at all for Korean viewers.
Very true. Yeah, so I'm sure it's one of those things that doesn't bother them. Like they would probably have a bigger issue with some of the Korean performances, whereas for me, I'm sure, honestly, Tiffany is probably a great actor, and it just comes down to direction and writing. So yeah, I'll be interested to see if her character comes back at all with Mr. O at some point, or if that was a one-off cameo, and we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think I read a spoiler, but you shall see.
I shall see. All right, well, there we go.
Yeah. But oh, last thing I wanted to talk about for pet
Yeah.
peeves actually. Some unnecessary zoom ins during the conversation with the secretary, no, the right hand man. I guess, is he a secretary? I don't know. The right hand dude who he wants it to be his son versus the actual eldest son, the chairman, when they're just cutting in to their own solo performances. Zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. You usually zoom in to build tension.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know why they were just zooming in. And then like when it was actually, I thought the lines that they said afterwards that were more impactful, it was just like,
Just completely
It was-
static.
yeah. And I was like, what's the point of all those zoom ins? And then do you ever think about this when there's a conversation happening between two characters, but they are only using the solo performances, like of their, maybe it's like a medium close up shot.
Yeah,
of
there's no
just them.
establishing shot of both of them.
Yeah, do you think there's something wrong with the take?
Yeah,
And that's why
most
they
likely.
had to. Yeah, they had to do the solo shots.
Yeah, okay. So to break this down for people, when you are directing a scene, when you're blocking a scene, as it's called, like when you're putting the actors there and you need to show dialogue between two people, what you have is called an establishing shot. So this is person A, this is person B. You show both of them.
For the listeners on the
Yes.
podcast,
Oh,
CB's
right.
holding his right hand and his left hand up.
Right. So my right hand in this case would be the chairman's right hand man, and the my left hand would be the eldest son, and they're having a conversation, right? You show both of them on screen so that exactly as it sounds, you establish that they are in this shared space, but also that way you can cut back to it to show how far apart they are. Like if they're getting closer, you get the sense that they have tension. Maybe there's like they're angry at each other, or if
Yes.
one backs away, it's showing he's intimidated or something like that. You have that as basically a wide shot. Then you can do the typical over the shoulder, shoot person A, shoot person B. But Qomi, what you were saying is in this case, they didn't do an establishing shot at all. And so it was
They did
just
at the
individual
beginning.
performances. Right.
Yeah.
Just to the beginning.
Yeah, like when he turned back to like have the conversation with him, he's like, "Oh, I have
Yeah.
a question for you." They have they started zooming in an establishing shot,
Mm-hmm.
and then it cut to the right hand man zooming in,
Sure.
vice chairman zooming in, and then he responds zooming in, and then he responds zooming in.
Never cutting back to both of them at the same time.
Yeah,
Okay. Which
Yeah, I don't know.
it's an odd way to shoot it because it kind of, you almost like lose where you are in the space. And as you were saying, it might indicate that they had a bad take or something like that because then they had to shoot both of them individually. We don't know.
yeah. I don't know. Whenever I see those scenes, I'm like, "There's something wrong with your
Yeah,
other
yeah,
footage." That's why you have to be using these solo shots.
Something in the edit is definitely not as
Didn't
it was
work.
meant to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it could be a continuity thing too. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Yeah.
very true.
yeah, so usually for continuity, there's someone who actually is in charge of, like, that book was placed at 90 degrees there. If you pick it up, you have to put it back down at 90 degrees type of thing. So there are people on set who do that. It's a really hard job because like you have to take a lot of notes about everything about that. So
like everything in the scene you have to make a note of. If that chair
Yes.
is moved, you have to note it. If that glass is moved, you have to note it.
Yes,
If this
and
person's
the water level on the glass.
totally the smallest things, that person has to have the greatest eye for detail. And so in this case, I'm trying to think what, like, they were talking over a desk, right?
No, I think they were walking out. So he was walking towards the door, and he was also standing close-ish to the door. So that's why he turned back. So they're both standing in the room.
And so you think maybe like, oh, the door was all of a sudden open in a shot or something like that.
Could be something like that, yeah. Because I don't know why else you wouldn't be using an establishing shot to break up those moments, because it gets repetitive and overused when you just keep flipping back and forth and back and forth. And especially when like you respond, I respond, you respond, I respond. Like, I don't know, man. I think something was funky with that scene.
There was something funky with that scene for sure.
Yeah, but that entire episode too. Did you notice that there was a lot of reflection shots?
Yeah, it seems to be a theme because there was also a lot of reflection shots in the first episode of his character seeing himself in the glass of the building he was working in. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if that's like a motif for the show.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought, damn, that's a lot of work. You're gonna have to like comp out the camera. You then make sure so comping out is like just removing unnecessary things too, or adding. It could be adding, removing, whatever. Comping is just like manipulating how the image, the frame looks.
You are adding either adding or removing things from a scene digitally in post production.
Yeah, and a lot of reflections mean like you're gonna see a lot of the camera in the reflections, or like unnecessary people, the crew, like what is it? Maybe the equipment that they use as well.
The gear,
like, yeah, you're gonna have to be so careful. So every time I saw a reflection shot, I'm like, if it's not at a angle you think that makes sense, that like you definitely won't see the camera. I'm like, yo, that's a lot of work. Like
a lot to, like, for a very very little payoff. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought like the reflection shot of her looking in the window and he comes up behind her, I thought that was cute. But then a really cool reflection shot was when they were going into the prestigious club, where it was a reflection on the ceiling and then it flips down to like them walking in. I was like, that is a cool use of the reflections. But also like at the end of the episode where it's like the big hollow windows, that's a lot of work because there's definitely crew members, there's equipment, everything, the camera. You're gonna have to get rid of those shots if you're not careful with where the camera's placed, especially when you're like cutting back and forth into their performances and the establishing shots.
Yeah,
I was like, dude, that's just a lot of work.
I mean, you could get around it. It's like, yeah, if you're really careful with your lighting, you might not get reflections. If you put up like a black curtain to hide your crew behind, but you still have to comp out the camera. Like, you're right. It's just the amount of forethought that would have had to go into that shot to save them in post-production is so much work, but it paid off. That one 200% ended on a fantastic shot. Yeah. Looking out the building, basically declaring war with his own family with this investment. So good. All right, and with that is going to be our pet peeves. Qomi, we wanted to highlight a comment this week that we had on YouTube. We'll be doing this each week if we get a comment that we want to call out, because we felt this one actually gave us a lot of context about what we were talking about in our first episode on Reborn Rich. What was this comment?
So this is from Jung So-hyun. I'm so sorry if I kind of butchered that. But thank you so much for the comment, and it was so informative as well. They said, this drama is also popular in Korea. It would have been more fun to know the modern and contemporary history of Korea. And in the drama, Soonyoung Enterprise took Samsung as its motif. His fourth son, a family company, came out of the family and established the film industry, currently CJ, which are all obviously notable companies from Korea. I was totally thinking too, when we first watched this drama, I was like, is Soonyoung supposed to be Samsung? And then this commenter said it took Samsung as its motif. Like, I was like, oh my gosh,
fully inspired by Samsung.
Yeah. I don't know. Sorry, motif. I hear people say motif. Yeah.
Wait, yeah. Is it not motif? I might be wrong in this case.
Anyways, someone can correct our English because, well, clearly we're not really good.
We're bad at that too.
Yeah, and CJ is a very well-known entertainment industry as well. They, I think they, yeah, it's film industry and they also do music.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like I've heard the name CJ Entertainment as like a parent company of agencies that represent K-pop groups.
Yeah, I think like Mamamoo's part of it or something.
Oh, like
think
so
there's
it would be like what
something-
RBW is under CJ Entertainment.
Something like that. Please
Right,
correct
okay.
us if we're wrong too. But like we totally didn't do our research about this. It was just based off of maybe memory.
Yeah,
things we
yeah,
probably
absolutely.
saw
It's one of those
online.
things that it's nice to have context for though from somebody who actually really knows what they're talking about, because knowing that it's Samsung or at least based off of Samsung gives it more of that grounding in reality. You know, they mention a lot of these historical events as we talked about earlier, and even knowing that the land he was given eventually turns into a city itself and all of these different things, knowing that it's Samsung and CJ Entertainment as the fourth son, in this case being the CEO, yeah, it provides a lot of interest, and I don't know, it makes it even more mysterious for me because I'm like, wow, okay, how is this going to play out? Is it going to play out like reality, or are we going to get
Yeah.
something really, really interesting in the end?
I think they have to be a little bit careful, especially if people do, if it's like public knowledge that it is kind of loosely based off of Samsung.
Totally with you. All right, and with that, that's going to end our highlighted comment of the week, but make sure you send in your comments. Let us know if we've missed anything, if there's any history you can add. Just give us a comment down below and we will try to respond.
I had a question for any possible viewers or commenters that
Ooh.
in the episode, the brothers, when they, well, obviously when the second brother was referring to the older brother, he said 형님. Usually you could just call your brother or someone an older male, if you're a male calling an older male, 형.
Hyung.
As a sign of respect or formality type of thing. You don't
That-
really call them by their names. Usually you just call them,
So Hyung being, what would be like the female equivalent of that? Would that be like Ani?
oh yeah, 언니 for girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would be like Hyung
Yeah.
for guys, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, exactly that. But in the episode, you see him calling him 형님, and the eldest son also calling the right-hand man 형님. I think I already know the answer to this, but it's like because you usually add the 님 at the end of like addressing someone as a sign of respect and also formality as well.
Right.
형 is already a form of is a respectful term or like endearing term or to call an older male anyways. So 형님, is that just to show that it is even more respectful in a way? You view them highly, like, or is it like in these rich families, like you have to show that extra sign of respect type of thing? Because I was just like wondering, like, 형 versus 형님. Like, I already kind of know the difference between them, but like it just sounds like to me it's like more formality, more respect. So if anyone has more insight about that, I would love to know more. I tried Googling this, but people weren't really helpful online.
It's always hard when you have like a very specific question like that. You almost need to
Yeah.
like talk to somebody about it. So yeah, if you have an answer, definitely let us know down in the comments. It would be hugely appreciated because we are constantly learning more about Korean communication, Korean culture, and so much through these shows. So it would help a lot.
Yes.
All right, now finally, it's time to review this episode. So this is not an overall rating for the series. Qomi, I want you to give me a rating for episode 3 of Reborn Rich out of 5 stars using a half point system. So you could give it a half a star, 5 stars. What would you give this episode?
3.5?
Yes. I would probably go with a 3, but I consider, a 2.5 to be average. So it's an above average episode.
Yeah, I think I'm usually pretty generous with my reviews anyways. Until I start really thinking about them. So let's not think. No think.
No
just go.
overthinking. 3.5, 3.
Next.
That's it. So we will be watching episode 4. We will have an episode coming out for that this week as well. So if you enjoyed this episode, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can see episode 4 and future episodes course.
Yeah. Smash that like button. Hit the bell notification.
I never thought I would hear you say that.
Uh,
No,
Anyways.
this is what we have to do. We have to do. It actually really, really helps us out. As you can see, this is our only second video on this channel. So to help us grow, to help us reach more people, hitting like, commenting, subscribing, all helps us a lot.
Yes, and we'd love to chat with you guys some more.
Exactly. But that's going to be it for this episode. We will see you for episode 4.
Episode 3 for 2 beans and a screen.
2 beans and a screen.
All right, bye.
Bye.